Hello again, and welcome to the second part of our discussion on DMA 30, section 3.8. We're going to continue our talk on solving percent problems, this time with proportions. So you'll remember from last time we talked about how to solve percent problems using percent equations. We talked about translating percent sentences into percent equations. Then we solved for amounts, percents, and bases. In this video, we're going to do the same thing, but with a different method. We're going to look at percent proportions. So we'll look at the formulas that we'll use, and then we'll solve again for the amounts, percents, and bases. Now here's the second method that we're going to use to solve for percent problems. It doesn't matter really which method that you use. Just pick the one that you're most comfortable with. If you liked the percent equation method that we were using last time, great. Stick with it. I personally kind of prefer the proportion method. I just like working with proportions better, but there's nothing wrong with the percent equation method. Use the one that's easiest for you. So the percent proportion method, you need to translate a percent sentence into a percent proportion using either of these two following equations, and it doesn't matter which one you use. The first one is the amount over the base equals percent over 100, but I like to think of it this way down here: the part, or the smaller number most of the time, over the whole quantity equals the percent over 100. And we solve these just like we would any other proportion problem. We would plug in the numbers that we know, and we'll have an unknown, we'll cross multiply, and then divide finally to solve. So let's use the percent proportion method to solve for an amount. So what number is 240% of 80.3? So remember our equation. I'm going to write it as part over whole equals the percent over 100. And then we'll start plugging everything that we know. So 100 is always going to be on the bottom over here. The reason why I like this method so much is because we don't have to change that percent to a decimal. We can just plug it in, as we see it. So we're just going to plug in 240 on top here. Okay, since we're writing it as a fraction over 100, there's no need to move the decimal. We just plug in the percent that we're given. Now, what number is 240% of 80.3? Of is going to be our whole. The of number is our whole, so 80.3 goes here. And our unknown, the what number, the part, goes on top. Now, we'll solve by cross multiplying. X times 100 will give me 100x. And that'll be equal to the product of 80.3 times 240. 80.3 times 240 is 19,272. Okay? Then we'll divide both sides by 100 to isolate the x. This will cancel and we're left with just x. And then we divide this side by 100. Dividing by 100 we know is really easy. We just move the decimal in twice. So our final answer is going to be 192.72. Now we'll solve to find a percent. 5 is what percent of 8.5? Okay, so remember, part over whole equals percent over 100. Plug in everything that we know. 100 is always on the bottom right over here. The percent is our unknown. It asks for what percent, so we'll use our variable x here. The whole is the of number of 8.5, our whole, and 5 is the part of that whole. Okay, so now we can solve. We'll cross multiply here and get 8.5x equals 5 times 100, or 500, and we'll finish by dividing both sides by 8.5. This will cancel and we're left with x on the left, and then 500 divided by 8.5. I'm going to round this to the nearest tenth. We get approximately 58.9. Excuse me, 58.8. And then we can just add the percent sign. Again, since we're using the percent proportion method and our percent is already expressed as a fraction over 100, there's no need to convert this from a decimal to a percent. The answer that we get is the percent answer. Now we'll solve for the base, or the whole. So 150 is 66 2/3% of what number? Let's jot down our formula. Okay, so 100 again is always going to be on the bottom. Okay, 66 2/3%. Let's imagine that we're trying to find an exact answer, so we're not going to approximate that repeating decimal 66.66666. We're going to write 66 2/3 as an improper fraction, so 66 times 3 plus 2, you might remember this from an earlier video, is going to be 200 over 3. So I'm going to plug that in as my percent, 200 over 3. Okay. The of number, the whole, is our unknown. Of what number? Of x. So that's going to be our whole. That's what we're solving for. And the part will be 150. Okay. We'll cross multiply. I like to do the variables first. So when we do x times 200 over 3, we'll get 200 over 3 times x equals 150 times 100. That's 15,000. Now, we'll solve for x. We could either divide by 20 over 3, but we know from earlier videos it's the same as multiplying by the reciprocal, 3 over 200. So we'll multiply this by 3 over 200. The 3 and the 3 cancel, the 200 cancel. We're left with x on the left equals, when I multiply across the top, 15,000 times 3, I get 45,000. Over 200 on the bottom. And when I divide 45,000 by 200, I'm going to get 225. So keep in mind, unless it tells you to round your answer, you're always going to want to express these mixed number percents as a improper fraction like this. And again, since we're dividing by 100, we don't have to remember to multiply this by 100 over 1 to change it from a percent, or by 1 over 100 to change it to a decimal form. So this is really why I like the proportion method better. When we have these funky percents, these repeating decimal percents, it makes life a lot easier on us. We just need to remember to change that mixed number into an improper fraction. So to review for section 3.8, we solved percent problems two different ways. We did percent equations where we translated percent sentences into equations and solved for the base, the whole, and the percent. And then we did the same thing but with the percent proportions formula. We set up those proportions so we could solve for the base, the amount, and the percent as well. That's all we have for 3.8. We'll see you next time for our last section of DMA 30, 3.9% applications.